Ukraine. President-elect Donald Trump wrote online about the current escalation, saying in part, quote, "The United States should have an ousted President Bashar
Latest, Alex.
Good morning to you. So Syrian rebels advancing at a stunning speed today, announcing that they have liberated the city of Damascus and
The latest, Alex.
Good morning to you. So Syrian rebels advancing at a stunning speed today, announcing that they have liberated the city of Damascus and ousted President Bashar al-Assad. So celebrations broke out at dawn this morning in the capital, with people flooding the streets. Rebel groups say that they have set the prisoners free. Syria's brutal civil war started 13 years ago. Opposition forces had not reached Damascus since 2018. The rebels are made up of a coalition of groups that have banded together to overthrow the Assad regime. The rebels say that the Syrian leader Bashar al-Assad has fled Damascus. His whereabouts remain unknown at this hour. His removal would mean an end to more than 50 years of his family's rule. Syria's prime minister says that the government is ready to turn over functions to a transitional government.
We even extend our hand to the opposition, who have extended their hand and confirmed that they will not harm anyone who belongs to this land.
Today, Syrians have stormed the presidential palace and the Iranian embassy. Iran, a big backer of the Assad regime, started evacuating its commanders and personnel on Friday. It comes as Russia, another key ally, is focused on its own war with Ukraine. President-elect Donald Trump wrote online about the current escalation, saying in part, quote, "The United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved." He also wrote that Russia and Iran are in a weakened state right now, one because of Ukraine and a bad economy, the other because of Israel and its fighting success. Now, the National Security Council says that President Biden and his team are closely monitoring the extraordinary events in Syria and staying in constant touch with regional partners. So today, the Syrian city of Homs, as you can see in this video, people are flooding the streets there as well, chanting, "Assad is gone, Homs is free." This fast-moving offensive began on November 27th. That was the same day that the ceasefire went into effect between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, the war in Syria has killed nearly 500,000 people. It has displaced as many as 12 million people. Now, here on the ground in Israel, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, are bolstering their forces securing the border with Syria and following the events there domestically, but they are saying they're not getting involved, something that we're likely going to continue to see other countries do as well. Iraq is now reportedly bolstering its border as well. Guys, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Alex, for that update. It's a fast-moving story. Let's go to Ryan Morrow. He's an investigative researcher of extremist groups and foreign threats at the Capital Research Center, and he joins us now. Ryan, I'd love to start with the question which you're probably the most qualified to discuss with us this morning, and that is understanding who might just be taking over Syria. If it is true now that the regime in Syria is turning over, the Assad regime after 24 years is losing power, what do we know about the extremist groups who've been waging this campaign now for, 12 years and look like they could be taking power in Syria?
Right, well, the one that's getting the most attention because they're leading the fight in Damascus and taking over places is called HTS. It's a Turkey-backed jihadist group that used to be part of Al-Qaeda. And the only reason that they're not part of Al-Qaeda is because Al-Qaeda was not so popular with those that it wanted to ally with. So you're talking about essentially Al-Qaeda backed by Turkey taking over a large part of Syria anyway. Some people are characterizing it as a complete takeover, but that's actually not true. There are other rebel groups, including ones that have long worked with the United States. There's some that have even worked with Israel. So there are alternatives here. So when we talk about the rebels, it's not like a single thing.
You know, one of the things I've been thinking about is what is best for the people in Syria. How do we know that this group or some combination of the other rebel groups is going to, in the long run, be better? And also, I'm concerned about the Christian minority. These are ancient Christian groups. Some people say they were better, or at least somewhat protected under Assad, and that now they'll be exposed. But then I've seen contradictory things. Where does that stand?
Well, in regards to the Christians, which is about 10% of the population,
Right.
there is a divide. And there are some that favor Assad's rule, not because they love what he's doing to his people. I mean, it's just horrific. The numbers, the torture, it's just unbelievable. He's like a supervillain on the worst scale. But because they fear that the jihadist rebels are going to try to exterminate them.
Yeah.
Now, HTS, the Al-Qaeda type group, is trying to have better PR and be more strategic and diplomatic than Al-Qaeda, and is saying we're going to protect the Christians. We'll see about that. But really, the only alternative to in this particular scenario that we have, because the Assad regime is basically gone, is to support groups like the Syrian Democratic Forces, which includes a Christian component. Allied with Sunni Arabs and allied with Kurds, and has long worked with the United States and controls most of the oil and gas. So to me, it seems like backing them seems to be the most obvious option. I don't think that we can take a position of not getting involved because we're already involved. We already have military forces operating in Syria.
Yeah, and obviously, we're not the only ones involved there. There are all kinds of proxies that are involved there. When you look at this sort of big picture overnight, can you identify any outside country or group that benefits the most from what's happened over the last couple of weeks, and then especially last night?
Sure. I mean, every adversary of the Iranian regime and what they call the axis of resistance, the legion of terrorist groups that Iran sponsors, are all hurt by this because they're so dependent on receiving Iranian aid through Syria and aid from the Syrian government directly. So this is a hellish scenario for the Iran-backed terrorist groups and the Iranian regime itself. Therefore, it does benefit Turkey, which I think is ultimately to our detriment, but it also benefits the U.S. and especially Israel, because even though a large chunk of the rebels are jihadists, Israel basically had a choice. They could either have Iran on its border, representing a strategic threat because Iran controlled the Assad regime, or they can have a more Somalia-type situation where you have all these fighting groups and they're busy fighting each other, so that's not a strategic threat. Every adversary of the Iranian regime and what they call the axis of resistance, the legion of terrorist groups that Iran sponsors, are all hurt by this because they're so dependent on receiving Iranian aid through Syria and aid from the Syrian government directly. So this is a hellish scenario for the Iran-backed terrorist groups and the Iranian regime itself. Therefore, it does benefit Turkey, which I think is ultimately to our detriment, but it also benefits the U.S. and especially Israel, because even though a large chunk of the rebels are jihadists, Israel basically had a choice. They could either have Iran on its border, representing a strategic threat because Iran controlled the Assad regime, or they can have a more Somalia-type situation where you have all these fighting groups and they're busy fighting each other. So that's not a strategic threat. It's not the same thing as having an enemy nation against you.
Ryan, I'm curious about what happens next. Obviously, as what you laid out, Iran loses. They're the biggest loser in this entire equation. Syria is, I believe I'm correct here, population-wise primarily Sunni, and these rebel groups are Sunni Muslims. That pushes Iran and its Shia Muslim power grip over Syria out. But what you talked about the United States playing a role. How do we? I guess we will play a role, but how concerned are we that Syria falls down the path of so many other countries who lost a stabilizing force, maybe a malevolent force, but still a malevolent stabilizing force, into what we saw in Iraq? You know, chaos, civil war, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, jihadist, terrorism. Like, how concerned should we be that this is the future now for Syria and the potential to blow back on the United States?
No, I mean, the consequences, negative consequences are very, very real for us to consider because jihadists are recruited and get battle practice in scenarios like this, in civil wars. Then when the civil war is over, jihadists don't just stop the jihad, they look elsewhere. For the foreseeable future, a lot of that fighting is going to be within Syria, I think. I personally do not consider Assad to have been a stabilizing force because he did cultivate these Al-Qaeda type elements, even as he fought them at times by promoting their ideology. A lot of American soldiers lost their lives in Iraq because Assad was helping the al-Qaeda elements go into Iraq and try to destroy the place. That's kind of the scenarios where you have these competing radicals, and really what the U.S. interest is going to be similar to what it has been, where we've had special forces in there working with Kurds, the rebel force I mentioned before, in protecting what it can of the oil and the gas, and trying to keep down ISIS and stop them from reforming, which is a possibility. And I think that could expand to trying to counter HTS and the other jihadist rebels, because you don't want them to get control of the entirety of Syria and those resources either.
What kind of risk is there that this destabilization that Will was talking about could expand beyond Syria? Are you concerned about that?
I am. I think that there's a strong possibility it could expand into Lebanon, because Hezbollah is there. And I think that the jihadists who have fought this long civil war, and the non-jihadists as well, against Assad, are not going to be too happy with the idea that a lot of these Hezbollah war criminals have gone over to Lebanon. So I could see it spilling over to there. HTS, I mean, the official name of the organization means the Organization for the Liberation of the Levant, which refers to countries outside of Syria, refers to the whole neighborhood. So ideologically, even though they try to make it sound like they're just pure Syrian nationalists and that's all they care about, it's just a strategic move. It's just PR. They, just like the other jihadists, seek a caliphate, and so does the Turkish dictator. And we have to keep that in mind as Turkey's lobby operates in the United States to try to convince all of us that they and the jihadists they support are some type of moderate solution to the problem.
So, Ryan, over the next week, what are you going to be looking at, like, big picture wise, about? I mean, you know, obviously Israel shares a good border with Syria. Are we going to see tanks rolling into Syria from other countries? Are we going to? What are you looking for over the next week in terms of countries outside forces trying to help stabilize things?
Well, there already are Israeli operations going on along that border area right now in order to protect Israel. And like I said, it's public information now that Israel has worked with around a dozen rebel groups in order to help protect itself in that part of the area. So I don't foresee anyone besides maybe the Turks really getting involved there militarily. There's already some fighting between some of the rebel groups, and Turkey and its proxies are going to probably want to move very quickly to attack the Syrian democratic forces that are allied with the United States. Again, particularly because they hate the Kurds, and the Kurds are part of that. But there are also Sunni Arabs and Christians who are part of this. So we have to keep that in mind as well, is that Turkey is an adversary to Christians in Syria as well.
All right, Ryan Murrow.
Really good point.
Thank you for being with us this morning, Ryan. Insightful stuff.
Thank you.
We'll keep that conversation going on throughout the morning. This is a big story of the day, and its repercussions in the region that you're asking about, Charlie, and in the chaos internally, which I know we're both concerned about because of its spillover onto the United States. We'll talk about that throughout the morning. But right now, the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris hosting Mass this morning for the first time since being nearly destroyed in a catastrophic fire 5 years ago.
Madeline Rivera has the story for us this morning. Good morning, Maddie.
Hi, good morning, guys. Today's masses mark the culmination of the roughly $1 billion project to restore the iconic church. French President Emmanuel Macron, French bishops, and priests from Paris's parishes are attending the Mass this morning to consecrate the altar. Later today, there will be a Mass for the general public, and it will be the first time that visitors will be able to enter the renovated cathedral. The Masses follow Saturday's ceremonial opening. About 1,500 dignitaries attended the event, including President-elect Trump, First Lady Jill Biden, and Prince William. The reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral also serving as the backdrop for international diplomacy this weekend. The Prince and Princess of Wales saying on an X post, a wonderful event to celebrate the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. It is an immense achievement to renovate such a beautiful and culturally important building. Thank you and well done to everyone who has been a part of this project. Also a pleasure to spend time with the French President Emmanuel Macron and President-elect Trump. Trump met with Macron and Ukraine Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, too. Trump has promised to quickly end the war in Ukraine. A readout from Zelensky's office says the trilateral meeting focused partly on the establishment of a, quote, just peace. Zelensky saying he was focused on strong security guarantees for Ukraine and making sure that Russia or any other aggressor has no possibility of returning. Surprise guest Elon Musk also attended the grand opening yesterday. This week, there will be masses for the firefighters who saved the building, the workers and the artisans who helped renovate it, and the donors who provided money for the renovation. Will, Rachel, and Charlie.
All right.
Thank you, Maddie.
You got it.
So nice to hear about all these masses being said this week in honor of Notre Dame and in honor of the people who helped rebuild it. This was a very interesting event. We're going to talk a little later on, you guys, with Jonathan Morse about the significance of Notre Dame, the significance of sort of Christianity and the state of Christianity in Western Europe. So we'll get to that. But there was also another meeting, which was Trump, Zelensky, and Macron, and there was some power moves going on, guys. We've been talking about it.
Yeah, take a look at the cover of the New York Post. Make America grip again. This is the handshake between Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump that everybody's talking about here. It looks like, we were actually kind of debating it just a moment ago. It looks like a clear power move by Donald Trump as you see it play out. That's actually not the most interesting part. Somehow it ended up almost a game of who's on top. That hand game, you know, where you see who can take the upper hand. It's, I guess, a power move. If you can see the cover of the New York Post, you can see what I'm talking about, where Donald Trump's hand is incredible.
Where's the video? Do we have the video?
He does an aerial. He comes in.
He comes in high. And I don't know. I would.
There it is. There it is, you guys.
No, it's not here.
No,
that is a power move.
That's the pull in.
You know, Charlie and I
push you in.
Every man knows the different things that are done subtly during a handshake.
Let's break this down. Because I think it's interesting.
And I would love to hear President Trump's thoughts. Well, Charlie, do you agree with me on this? I think every man knows. Okay, first of all, there's a lot of different things you can do during a handshake to assert dominance. There's the quick gripper.
Yep.
You know what the quick grip?
Yeah.
If you come back and it's if you can get the guy's fingers, you know what I mean, instead of a. But it's also a little bit. You shouldn't do it because I'll show you what I mean. Like if I get you here,
that's weak.
You're in a bad position, right?
But that makes weak.
You look like you offered a weak shake.
Yeah. So it's called the quick grip. It's a quick grip instead of coming in.
No, but you said Trump does the pull in.
I'm not going to do it to you, but I'm going to do it to Charlie.
Okay, go ahead.
Then there's and then you have to grab onto something. Like Joe Rogan was saying when the first time he met him, he was like having to grab onto the table and chairs and stuff.
It's the other guy's in the awkward position, but I don't know about this one. Yeah, I don't know what this is. So welcome.
The other thing that Trump does he does the hug baffle too, where you go in, you shake a hand, and then you put your other hand up on their shoulder to keep distance, so somebody doesn't give you a bro hug
and pat their shoulder.
Yeah. He does that so that he just doesn't want any hugging.
Well, Macron seemed to like it. He says they have a great relationship. Watch.
President, I just say it's a great honor for French people to welcome you 5 years later. And you were at that time present for the first time, and I remember the solidarity and your immediate reaction. So, welcome back again.
Well, thank you very much.
We are very happy to have you here.
Thank you very much. Very great honor. And we had a great relationship, as everyone knows. We accomplished a lot together, and the people of France are spectacular. I guess it's one of our largest groups in the United States, French people. And we respect them and we love them. Very talented people, extremely energetic people, as you know very well.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to be here. We had a good time together, and we had a lot of success, really great success working together on defense and offense too. And it certainly seems like the world is going a little crazy right now.
Yeah.
And we'll be talking about that. Thank you very much for being here.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup. So not even president yet, but actually taking the stage as if he was. Joe Biden didn't show up, but Jill Biden was there. Look at this picture of them sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, she looks starry-eyed. I really do believe she voted for him. Look at that.
It was.
I mean, that's true love.
Interesting dynamic.
That's the look you give when you meet the guy you just voted for?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
The whole room, it was really, the power dynamics in that room were pretty amazing. There was not a set of eyes in the room that was not on Donald Trump the entire time.
Right.
Yes. He's already making our country.
I like the yellow tie, by the way.
Me too.
It's notable. It's notable.
Yeah.
It's not the red tie. It's the yellow tie.
It's not red, blue.
Yeah.
Going for gold.
I like
in Paris.
Love it. All right. Well, we're going to go to a Fox News alert. The nationwide manhunt still underway for the United Healthcare CEO's killer. The brand new pictures as police are on the hunt. That's next.
Fox News alert. The manhunt for the suspect wanted after United Healthcare CEO was killed here in Manhattan is on. The NYPD releasing these new photos of the suspect as officials believe he could be heading to Atlanta. Yesterday, dive teams searching a Central Park lake for his gun after it was not in the backpack they found. As Mayor Adams warns, the net is closing in. Former FBI Special Agent Jason Pack joins us now. Jason, great to see you this morning. A couple of quick specific questions. So first, let's start with the search in the lake in Central Park. There are suggestions, I don't know this for sure, we're not positive, but it's a search for the weapon. There are some indications as well that it could have been like a veterinarian type of weapon, a gun designed to put animals down on farms or ranches. So and I think people are assuming that, are speculating or extrapolating that from what they've seen on video, right? What do you think we could learn from recovering the weapon if it's inside that lake?
Well, good morning, Will. Thanks for having me. I think recovering the weapon inside of the lake will provide firearms analysis and be able to provide the shell casings or any other type of forensics that are able to be recovered from the weapon, whether that's the actual weapon that fired or not, and those types of things to be able to match it. They can also run what's called a NIBINS check through the ATF and see if the weapon was used in any other crime, and that might help identify the owner of that weapon. And so just having a thorough investigation like the NYPD is doing, canvassing every aspect of Central Park there, seeing if there were witnesses, not only forensic evidence, but seeing if there were any other people around with cameras, those types of things. All these pieces are going to help tighten the net around the suspect, no matter where he is.
Well, I think one of the reasons I asked that question is there are some suggestions, Ian. I think there's been conflicting evidence or conflicting information on this. They might already have his name. There was some hints and suggestions at that yesterday in New York. If it's true they already have his name, what is the benefit to law enforcement for not releasing his name? I saw that Mayor Adams or someone at the NYPD said, we don't want to help him in any way. But help me just understand why that would help him if his name were released.
Well, right now, he doesn't know if law enforcement actually knows his identity or not, and he may feel a little safer where he is. The calculation to keep a name out of the public or hold it back is a conversation had by many a law enforcement commander in most types of fugitive investigations, particularly these high-profile ones. And so holding his name back gives law enforcement the edge, and should they know where he is, they can check his known associates where he may or may not have gone before and kind of tighten the noose around him and make his movements more difficult.
So as you take an overview now, just step back for a moment, take an overview of what we know about this crime so far. What are your thoughts? I mean, professional hit job, vengeance killing, grievance from an employee. I ask you that taking into account the level of sophistication that this killer did or did not exhibit in both committing the crime and escaping New York.
Well, I know from experience being on the other side of these investigations that when we are out here trying to figure out what's going on, the fact is that there are more facts known to law enforcement that are not out there. And so it's interesting to be able to put these conjectures together, but really what you have to do is match the facts to the evidence. And so every time a new piece of evidence is located, it provides another starting point for them. And it also notes progress. And so you saw DCPI put out put out the photos overnight of the full face of the suspect. And so someone out there knows him. And so putting these pictures out is a calculation by the investigation team. I'm sure the team now is coming in from a couple of hours of sleep, coming into the overnight shift, seeing what leads they're following up on today, and going out and formulating a plan to see what we need to do today and what those priority tips are, including where else to search, what other video canvases to do, and putting together a solid timeline. Because while we're able to talk about things like this, they have to be able to prove these things in order to get a warrant or possibly arrest the suspect.
All right. Jason Pack, thanks for joining us this morning on the latest on this manhunt. Okay, a triumphant Trump already back on the world stage, getting to work.